Welcome back. The Supreme Court says next term it will take up a case that could have major implications on voting rights, fundamentally changing the landscape of election law.
The justices granted review in Moore v. Harper, a case focused on how election lines are drawn. Maura Sirianni has more.
The U.S. Supreme Court Thursday announcing it has agreed to hear a case next term that could upend election laws across the country. In the final days of an explosive, controversial session, the justices said they've agreed to hear Moore v. Harper, a case centered on newly drawn maps of voting districts for North Carolina's 14 seats in the next U.S. House of Representatives. Republican state lawmakers say they want to resurrect a map that North Carolina's state courts struck down after finding it violated several provisions in the state's constitution by giving Republican candidates an unfair advantage through partisan gerrymandering.
There's been a lot of attention, as there should be, on the Supreme Court and what their decisions mean for Americans. But I think more than anything else, the consistent through line has been returning more and more power to the states.
Chris Cooper is a political strategist and professor at Western Carolina University. He says depending on how the court rules, this could have major implications, especially in those states with a large amount of right-wing legislatures.
And so what this would mean if it would pass in North Carolina and Arizona and Wisconsin and many of these swing states that are controlled by the Republican legislature is that the courts would not provide a guardrail, that it would be the legislature's decision would be the final one, essentially.
In their appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, the North Carolina Republican lawmakers argue the U.S. Constitution's Elections Clause gives state legislatures the power to determine how congressional elections are conducted without any checks and balances from state constitutions or state courts. Depending on how the conservative majority court rules, the case could end up giving more power to state legislatures when it comes to elections for Congress and the presidency, and block state courts from reviewing challenges to results. The case has both Democrats and some Republicans concerned about the future of our democracy. Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger, a member of the January 6th Select Committee, reacting to the news on Twitter, saying, quote, "After the attempted coup, this cannot happen." Democratic Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez adding, "If the president and Congress do not restrain the court now, the court is signaling they will come for the presidential election next." Cooper says the case is already on the radar of Americans across the country.
I expect this is going to be perhaps the most important issue of the next Supreme Court term. And I think voting rights activists across the country and just interested citizens should be paying attention to this case.